Hello, friends. The root of the word imagination comes from the Latin for image. The suffix of that word, ation, means action or process, and also from the Latin. The dictionary definition of imagination follows very closely to that. The faculty of the mind which forms and creates images. Imagination is sometimes synonymous with or attached to the terms and concepts of originality and creativity. The four works you see on your screen are by Andy Goldsworthy. He's a British sculptor, and these are four of his constructions, his ephemeral constructions meant to go back to nature in a short amount of time and be documented with photography. Some of you may be familiar with his work. That tree that you see up in our upper left is actually, that glow around it is created by autumn leaves that he has graduated out from the base of the tree itself. So it looks like it's just glowing. You can see the technique a little better down in that one on the lower right side where you see the leaves in that very graduated, careful process of his. How he got that black center, I really don't know. Up above it is a spiral on the beach created with those beautiful white stones. And on the lower left, you have shards of rock that come together into that little more foreboding image there. I first came into contact with Andy Goldsworthy's work several decades ago, and it was a revelation to me. It seemed the perfect vision of what art can be in a time of environmental collapse. It is work that is rich in craftsmanship and design, two qualities I greatly admire. It is also work that transcends itself and drawing us to the beauty that is in nature, waiting for us to discover. You go beyond an appreciation of just Goldsworthy's work, and you see the beauty that is around us. In these works, Andy Goldsworthy uses the three qualities I discussed in my definition. They are certainly imaginative. In the works, we see images that were first constructed in the artist's mind and made manifest. We see creation of something that he used skill and imagination to produce and are new and original. But how creative and original are they? Certainly, we see there were other artists such as Robert Smithson, who also used natural materials from the area to create wonderful things such as spiral jetty. This is found in the Great Salt Lake, not too far from us. And it's not ephemeral in that nature does not take it back, but eventually it may. But it does submerge into the lake and be exposed again, determined by the level of the lake itself. But we can go back farther than that for Andy Goldsworthy's inspirations. And we come to the Australian Aboriginally dream or songline art. This is artwork that symbolically describes and marks the travel journey of the ancestral spirits as they create the land and culture. And for the Aborigines, this isn't a thing of the past. This is a thing of the present that needs to be done time and time again. possibly started 30,000 years ago. But it's not simply people even that create this work of natural objects in their environment as art. The bowerbird from Australia and New Guinea is another great example of a creative artist that produces his wonderful bower. And this is an exceptional example. From his natural environment, just like Andy Goldsworthy, he collects items and forms these remarkable assemblages with his bower, his impressive bower that he has in the background there. Now, he doesn't do this specifically to be artistic objects. He is trying to lure a mate and have a propagation of the species. And with this fellow, I can't imagine that he wasn't remarkably successful. Does all these predecessors I've shown you diminish the work of Andy Goldsworthy? No, because all works of art have predecessors. Imagination, creativity, and originality are influenced by the individual's experience. It can't happen without it. And this is true of all forms of art. Dance, music, literature, drama, film, and more all have influences of what came before them. This does not lessen those who creatively build on what has gone before. This is from Lascaux Cave in France. It is said by some that the last truly original painting was done on a cave wall, and artists have been building on that painting ever since. Notice the little geometry above the horse. While this sense of one lineage is an exaggerated concept, there is still some truth in it. I cannot resist showing you this very recently discovered Neolithic wonder created 12,000 years ago. It is being called the Sistine Chapel of the Ancients. Discovered last year, it consists of tens of thousands of paintings and symbols on nearly 8 miles of cliff face. Did the painters of this marvel come up with the art and pictographs themselves as creative acts? Oh, probably not, as they may have evolved over centuries. But there may have certainly been some painters who improved on their predecessors. Note the geometry again, so prevalent. 5 years ago, I decided to switch from the content-oriented direction of my work that had occupied me for 35 years and turned to the geometric. My intent has been to make paintings without recognizable subject matter that gives the viewer a new visual experience. I give little thought to imagination or creativity in making my art. The work seems more evolved than imagined. Throughout my career, each painting within a series leads to the next. This is the first section of that triptych. It's 2 by 3 feet. And here is a detail, surface detail. I've had a long running love affair with texture and color. While imagination, of course, is not limited to the arts. Science, religion, medicine, business, government, law, transportation, on and on, evolve through imagination. Albert Einstein said that imagination was more important than knowledge. This is a bold statement in a world so focused on knowledge. But without imagination, knowledge is stagnant. The growth of knowledge needs imagination for innovation, insight, and transformation. In Einstein, we see the perfect example. He often used visual thought experiments from his imagination to give himself insights that he would use to form ideas that revolutionized physics. The imagination leads to knowledge. Imagination is the domain of every human being that has walked on this planet, and probably other living creatures as well. It is not unusual to hear someone say, "I have no imagination." That is simply not true. I don't think people could function if they had absolutely no imagination. Our minds are image-making machines. Thoughts are many times accompanied by images which often pass unnoticed as we have become more attentive to the words we generate rather than the images. When we say we are thinking, we most often generate both words and images. Before children develop speech, their lives and images, sounds, touch, taste, and smells. Images are a primary way they experience life, and images not associated with words. They are little vacuums of sensory experience. They are creating a stockpile of sensory information in their minds. Do they create wordless imagined images? I don't know, but it would seem to be a logical thing for them to do with this pile of information they're gathering. It may be that imagination is a pre-existing aspect of human nature. In the technologically dominated world in which we live now, imagery is created by the vast array of visual media that our children consume. To some degree, this has been true for a long time in the past 5 decades. This has increased to such an extent that little imagination is left in entertainment. Someone else creates the imagery that we now simply consume. A quote from Margaret Atwood's astonishing trilogy, Mad Adam, is, quote, "They spent the first 3 years of school getting you to pretend stuff, and the rest of it marking you down if you did the same thing," end quote. While this blanket condemnation of education has many exceptions, it is nevertheless has some truth. As the education of our children progresses, there does seem to be less and less encouragement of imaginative thinking. Even in the arts, where I spent 30 years, it was very obvious that many students had lost much of their imaginations by the time they reached me at the age of 18 or 19. They had been encouraged and rewarded for simply reproducing existing images and being praised if their skills doing so improved. Imagination was minimal. It often took years to convince them that imagination was more important than technical skill. Reading is a tremendous stimulation for the imagination. When only words are present, it is our job to create images. No two people who read a book have the same experience, because although the words are the same, our imagination and experience makes the content our own. The bad news is that in 2016, the US average of personal interest reading was 17 minutes a day. The villain again is, of course, technology, and all delivered by a supercomputer that fits in our hand. Another way of expressing John Lennon's thought that reality leaves a lot to the imagination is that imagination expands reality. Imagination can shape and transform reality, as the Beatles certainly did. An area in which imagination can reach most of us is dreaming. Even though we might think so, dreams do not come from outside ourselves. They are composed of that vast stockpile of experiences and images that are stored in our brain. Whether we remember them or not, they can be put together in some very strange ways. Without imagination, no dreams. Dreams are a kind of unbidden imagination, where our minds create stories for us from the sublime to the horrific. Daydreaming is not as uncontrolled as night dreaming. It is a brief or not so brief exit from the reality of the day, where imagination takes over for a while and we are transported to an experience and imagery our minds provide. Our educational system has not overly encouraged daydreaming, but that attitude has changed in some of the business world today. Daydreaming is encouraged as a portal to innovative thinking and relaxation that enhances productivity. Letting your imagination take you to daydream breaks might be the most creative thing you do all day. Everyone does have an imagination, but in our culture, that imagination may not be nurtured. There are many ways that imagination can be rejuvenated. And yes, when I was driving through the Vermillion Cliffs, there was a white raven in the clouds, almost that distinct. Here is a short list of ways that you can cultivate your imagination. A list of 9. Number 1, you can simply imagine a task in your mind before you do it, an imaginary rehearsal. This may not only exercise your imagination, but also improve the result of the task in hand. Number 2, visualize new constructive habits to replace bad habits. Before you indulge in that poor habit, visualize the positive one. It may provide the distance needed to change. Number 3, very short, read more, as we just talked about. And number 4, also, let yourself daydream. Number 5, make something. Art, cooking, woodworking, sewing, writing, gardening, and so on. Make something and let your imagination be part of the process. Number 6, sit quietly. This can be done in many ways, and I find it stimulating for my imagination. Number 7, gain new knowledge and skills. Learning is fertile ground for the imagination. Number 8, do puzzle games. Figure things out. To be honest, I do that one very poorly. Number 9, and my favorite, expand your perception and experience. Look more closely at your environment, whether the natural world or your living room or a gas pump. When possible, have new experiences. Travel, play, go to museums, try a new sport, and so on. New perception and new experiences create a new stockpile for the imagination to draw from. All of these 9 ways to expand imagination are also 9 ways to keep your brain healthy and to avoid stagnation and decay of the brain that can plague us in elder years. What a bonus! The imagination should be the center of your life. So says a giant of imagination, Ray Bradbury. It should certainly be a larger part of our life, imagination. There is no doubt that an increased imaginative life will enhance your experience of life. Your life will be more fulfilling. And the beauty of this, it is not something external that you bring into your life. It is something within you, within yourself, that you bring out. You only need to cultivate and activate it.